I took the night shift at a 24-hour gas station on the edge of Cedar Hollow, a small town off State Route 19, where the fog sits low and the deer outnumber people. It wasn't a career move. It was math. Night shift paid $1 more, and $1 more meant I could cover rent, daycare, and the medical bill that still arrived in pale envelopes like dire news in polite clothing. On winter nights, the station looked like a ship stranded in black water, fluorescent lights buzzing, glass doors smudged by gloved hands, the air outside clean and mean. The first few hours were always busy, commuters topping off, truckers grabbing coffee that smelled like burnt bread, and high schoolers slapping energy drinks on the counter with an attitude that said they weren't tired. They were immortal. By 11, Cedar Hollow went quiet the way small towns do, abruptly like someone yanked a power cord. The parking lot emptied. The pumps blinked to themselves. The only sounds inside were the refrigerator hum and the register's polite chirps. I worked alone most nights. My manager, Phil, swore the new security system was practically NASA. I didn't argue. I straightened chip bags, wiped counters, and told myself the cameras could see me even when I couldn't see them, like guardian angels with hard drives. It was near midnight when he walked in. I noticed him because I notice everyone after 11. He was in his mid-30s, maybe. Curly brown hair flattened under a gray beanie, cheeks that hadn't seen a razor in a few days, and a black backpack strapped too tight across his chest like he was afraid it would run away. He didn't make eye contact. He cut straight down the far aisle, hands buried in his jacket pockets, and stopped beside the coolers like he'd forgotten why he came. When I said, "Evening," he didn't answer. He watched his reflection in the cooler door, tipping his head left and right as if he didn't recognize himself. Then he drifted away, reappeared 2 aisles over, and then came back again. We were dancing for a few minutes, me stocking jerky, him orbiting without buying, until he finally came to the counter. "Bathroom?" he asked. His voice was low and gravelly, and he kept it aimed at the lottery rack behind me. "Back right, past the coffee." I smiled, the keys hanging by the door. He didn't take the key. He nodded once, looked down at the register display glowing green like a tiny fish tank, and walked toward the coffee station instead. I watched him in the convex mirror mounted near the ceiling. He stood between the creamer pumps as if he'd never seen such wonders. The backpack bulged. When he turned, the straps bit into his shoulders. He tugged at them compulsively 1, 2, 3 times, then slid away down the candy aisle. You learn not to invent stories about customers because your brain will grab any hint and turn it into a horror movie. Maybe he was just nervous. Maybe he had anxiety. Maybe whatever was in the bag was laundry. People carried laundry to weird places. Still, I slid the silent alarm a half-inch closer with my palm. The next time he passed the counter, he stopped too close, close enough that I could smell the stale sweetness of his breath like fruit gone foul. "You," he said, then started again. "You work here alone?" "No," I lied, because that's the rule. "My co-worker's in the back," he smiled. It cut across his face wrong, like a crack in glass. "Yeah?" His gaze finally met mine. It was flat and shiny like the cooler doors. "You're pretty." "I can help you find something," I said, pretending I hadn't heard. He licked his lips. "You seem charming. Are you local?" "Cedar Hollow born and raised," I said, because it was easier to keep my voice light than to let the silence thicken. "Can I ring you up?" He didn't have anything to buy. He lifted an empty hand like he was surprised by it. Then he leaned in and whispered, "You got a boyfriend?" I stared at the register's green numbers. "Yes. Can I have your number anyway?" I gave him a fake one I'd memorized for situations like this. Same area code, believable rhythm. He repeated it back slowly as if tasting it. Then he grinned, not pleased exactly. Triumphant. "I'll text you," he said, and drifted toward the back like a leaf in weak wind. When the chime over the door stayed quiet, I realized he hadn't left. I tried to return to routine, refill receipt paper, rotate the milk, wipe down the coffee bar, but awareness of him moved with me, a weight in the room. He made another loop. Another. The backpack bumped the end caps. He adjusted the straps with those 3 little tugs each time. When he reappeared near the hot case, he asked, "Are you sure you're alone?" I didn't answer that one. "Bathroom's on the right," I said again, because repeating facts felt like building a fence. He stared a second too long. Then he said, "You gave me a fake number." I kept my face still. No, I didn't. He rubbed his jaw with his knuckles, eyes flicking to the convex mirror and back to me. I called it, he said. Right here, in the store. He lifted the backpack strap and let it snap against his shoulder like a rubber band. That wasn't nice. Before I could form an answer, the walkie on my hip crackled. Maya, are you okay? It was Phil's voice, distorted into a cone of static. The camera shows somebody at the counter. Need me to call it in? I pressed the transmit button with my thumb so he wouldn't see. All good, I said cheerfully into the air as if I were singing to nobody. Slower than molasses. The man's nostrils flared. Who was that? My coworker, I lied again. He's in the office. The man's smile peeled wider. Then why'd you lie about being alone? I didn't, I said. Do you want coffee? He didn't, he wanted something else. We stood there, the hum of the coolers loud as a generator, until he drifted away again.
He didn't leave.
He didn't use the bathroom. He didn't buy anything. He took up space. He became the only thing in the room. I told myself to wait him out, but my body wasn't listening. My shoulders tightened until the muscles in my neck buzzed. The seconds went sticky. After a minute that felt like 5, I stepped into the back room, the little concrete box where we kept paper towels and cases of soda, and locked the door. I let my head thump softly against the stacked boxes, breathe. Count to 10. Call Phil, call the cops, do something. A minute later, the back room door latch jiggled. Maya? Phil said over the walkie. You stepped off camera. You okay? I didn't have a chance to answer. The latch jiggled again, more insistent. Then the door handle twisted, stopped against the lock and kept turning as if that could force new physics on the metal. The man's voice came through the thin door. Why'd you lie? He asked conversationally. Why'd you run? I stared down at my hands. They weren't shaking yet. I listened to the hum of the drink cooler on the other side of the wall, a sound I'd never noticed until I was counting on it to out-hum my heartbeat. Go back up front, I said. I'll call the police. Don't, he said, almost tender. Don't do that. The handle stopped turning. Silence. For a second I thought he'd left. Then the door shivered softly just once as if something bumped it. A shoulder or the corner of a bag. Do you know what's in my backpack? He asked. I didn't answer. My eyes tracked the only things that could be weapons in the room. A box cutter, a spray bottle of cleaner, and a broken wooden pallet propped in the corner. The pallet slats looked like teeth. On the other side of the door, something unzipped. The sound crawled down my spine. Metal teeth slow and deliberate. He wasn't rushing because he wasn't worried I'd run. There was nowhere to go. The back room had one door, no windows. Phil always called it a bunker, like that was reassuring. You gave me a fake number, he said, his voice closer to the crack now, like he'd crouched. But we don't have to start like that again. We can reset. I can come back there. We can just talk. I realized he was trying the hinges, pressing at them with something from the bag, testing the screws. The door vibrated with each gentle push. The lock was decent, but the frame was old wood, and old wood remembers storms and yields to them. Phil, I whispered into the walkie. Call it in, no answer. Either he hadn't heard my call, or the signal was weak due to the concrete walls. I pictured the store's layout. The distance from the back room to the front door, 10 steps to the stock corridor, 6 to the open floor, and 20 to the glass doors that whooshed when they sensed heat and motion. If he was crouched, if he had to stand and hoist the backpack, if he misjudged his momentum even for a second, I could make it. The hinges squealed softly. The world narrowed to the sound, the tiny complaint of metal shifting in old wood. I grabbed the box cutter with one hand, the cleaner with the other, and planted my soles on the concrete. The door flexed again. I kicked it hard, not at the handle but at eye level, the way my aunt taught me after a disastrous date 12 years ago in a different life. The impact startled him. I heard his breath catch, a rabbit noise. He stumbled back. I turned the lock, ripped the door open, and ran. The world outside the back room burst into 2 bright aisles and glossy floors. I cut left, then right, and my shoes slid ridiculously and loudly. A display of sunflower seeds rattled like rain. I hit the glass doors, and they hesitated, half a second that felt like betrayal, and then they whooshed open, blessing me with cold air. Behind me, footsteps, the clatter of something heavy swinging against something hard. He was swift. The backpack thudded a rhythm off the end caps. The parking lot was moon-bleached and empty. My car, an aging Corolla I loved more than most people, sat under the pole light like a faithful dog. The keys were already in my pocket because I'd violated my own rule and kept them there, superstitiously. I unlocked the door and flung myself inside. The seatbelt wouldn't catch. My fingers forgot how to finger. The engine turned over and coughed. He reached the doors. He didn't sprint. He stepped out slowly like someone entering a lake to test the temperature. He scanned the lot and found me. His face was blank, not angry now, not triumphant, just empty, wiped clean of whatever he'd been performing inside. He reached up and adjusted the backpack strap 1, 2, 3 times. I reversed too fast, tires squealing, then shot toward the exit lane, which felt a mile wide and still too narrow. In the rear view, I saw him raise one arm, palm open like he was blessing me or stopping traffic. Then he lowered it. Then he started walking, not toward me, but along the pumps, peering into the shadows between them as if he'd misplaced something important and was certain I'd be kind enough to return it later. I drove to the sheriff's substation because it was closer than home, and closer felt like safer. I sat in the parking lot and cried the way you do when you're alone and adrenaline knows it can finally leave. A deputy named Ramos took my statement under the sodium lights, his notebook filling with a neat geometry of my fear. He said all the things they say, that I did the right thing, that they'd pull the station footage, and that I should text him if I remembered anything else. He didn't promise they'd find the person. He didn't lie. I appreciated that. Phil called 3 times before I answered. "You okay?" he asked. He meant, "Are you coming back?" He meant, "The morning shift starts at 6 and I don't have coverage." "I can't," I said, and for once I didn't apologize for that. I went home to my apartment that remembered me with silence. I locked the door and then pushed the dresser in front of it because locks are ideas and dressers are physics. My daughter was at my sister's that week. The little shoes by the mat looked like abandoned birds. I sat on the couch and watched the dark window watch me back until the border of everything softened, and I must have slept upright. The next morning, Ramos called to say they'd reviewed the footage. "We see him," he said. "In and out." He never showed his face to the outside cameras. He never came into contact with the bathroom key. Never bought a thing. I agree with what you mentioned. We will distribute still images to the county offices. Did you see the backpack? I asked. My mouth was dry not because of thirst, but because my body continues to experience panic long after the event has ended. "We see it," he said. "What was in it?" There was a prolonged silence. "We can't tell from the video." That night I didn't go back to work. Phil left 2 voicemails, one measured, one less so. I played my daughter's favorite cartoon at a volume that didn't match the quiet of the apartment. I heated water for tea and only remembered it when the kettle emitted a shrill whistle, which felt entirely genuine. I did go back eventually. Money has a gravity that yanks harder than fear if you let too many bills accumulate. But I changed the way I existed in that building. I kept the backroom door propped with a wedge so it wouldn't latch unless I told it to. I wore my keys on a lanyard across my chest where my heart could feel their weight. I learned the names of the night regulars and greeted them by those names so they'd feel the obligation to be decent. I kept the box cutter within reach and placed the cleaner in a location where I could find it without looking. I taped Ramos's card beneath the counter and didn't tell Phil because it felt like a charm I didn't want anyone else touching. Sometimes a car would pull up just after midnight, and my throat would close for no reason that cameras could see. Occasionally a man with a backpack would come in and buy a coffee and ask for change and leave. Like the world wanted me to believe men with backpacks usually do. I never saw him again. But I think about the sound the zipper made, teeth parting, patient and certain, more than I think about his face. Faces blur, sound sick. There's a flavor to fear when it arrives slowly, when it peels itself open in front of you, when it asks calmly if you're alone and you're not sure if the answer matters. People ask, when I tell the story, why I didn't stay until the cops came. Why didn't I wait in the back room and stake my claim on the lock? Why I ran. He asked if I knew what was in the backpack, and his tone resembled that of a teacher questioning a student who has already failed the first test. The door flexed, the room was small, and my whole life felt just 10 paces away in the cold air. Inside the old Corolla, where I still had the ability to say no later. Because occasionally the scariest thing isn't what's in the bag. It's the certainty that the person holding it believes he's the only one who gets to decide. I had been working the night shift at Pine Hollow Gas and Go for about 6 months when it happened. The pay wasn't great, but it kept my rent paid and my fridge stocked. The station sat just off an old highway that barely saw traffic after midnight, surrounded by thick woods and endless dark. Most nights were predictable: restocking shelves, wiping down coffee machines, maybe a late-night trucker stopping for fuel. It was boring, sure, but safe. At least it used to be. It started around 10:45 p.m., right after I'd clocked in. The chime above the door rang and I looked up and froze. It was Samantha. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. I'd blocked her number, her socials, everything. Our breakup had been messy, and her messages afterward were worse. She'd shown up to my old apartment once, drunk and crying, saying she couldn't live without me. That was the night I realized I had to cut her off completely. And now she was standing there under the harsh fluorescent lights, smiling like nothing ever happened. "Hey, Ethan," she said, her voice casual but tight. I forced a half smile. "Hey, what are you doing here?" She shrugged, pretending to browse the snacks. "Just driving through. Saw the lights. Thought I'd say hi." Bullshit. No one just drives through Pine Hollow after dark. I tried to stay polite, hoping she'd get bored and leave. "I'm working, Sam. Maybe we can talk some other time, okay?" She didn't move, just stared. "You never answered my texts," she said, her voice low, almost hurt. "You changed your number." "Yeah," I said quietly, scanning the counter for any customers who might walk in. There were none. "You were sending a lot of messages. I needed some space." Her eyes hardened. "Space? You ghosted me." I sighed, trying to keep my voice calm. "Samantha, please. I'm working. You need to go." She just smiled. A strange, empty smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she walked out. For the next 10 minutes, I stood at the counter, pretending to clean while my stomach twisted in knots. Through the window, I could see her car parked by pump 4, engine off, headlights still on. She was just sitting there, watching. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe she was just cooling off. But every few minutes I'd glance up and she'd still be there. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped outside, the cold air hitting my face like ice. Her driver's window was rolled halfway down. "Samantha," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you can't stay here. You need to go home." She smiled again, but there was something wrong about it. Too wide, too calm. "I just wanted to talk. You wouldn't answer me anywhere else." "Not tonight," I said. "Please." Her smile vanished. Her face went blank. Then she rolled the window up and turned off her headlights. I stood there for a few seconds, unsure what to do. When I went back inside, I locked the doors. It was quiet for a while after that. Too quiet. At around 1:30 a.m., I was restocking the fridge when the door chime went off again. I froze. The door was locked. I knew it was. I peeked over the counter. The front door was wide open. The fog from the highway was spilling inside, pooling on the floor. "Samantha?" I called out. No answer. Then I heard it. The soft sound of footsteps behind the shelves. Slow, careful, moving closer. I grabbed the small flashlight we kept under the counter and stepped forward, my heart hammering in my chest. "Sam, if that's you." "I'm calling the cops," I said. The footsteps stopped. Then came a soft whisper from the far aisle. "I just want to talk." I spun around, the light sweeping across the shelves. Nothing. Just rows of chips and bottled water. My hands were shaking now. I reached for the phone behind the counter and dialed 911, but before I could even press call, the power went out. The store fell into complete darkness, except for the red glow of the open sign flickering in the window. Then, tap, tap, tap from the glass. I turned toward the front. Samantha was standing there outside the door, her face pressed to the glass. The red light painted her features in eerie color. Pale skin, blank eyes, and that same dead smile. She lifted her hand slowly and waved. I backed away from the counter, whispering to myself, "She can't get in. The doors are locked." Then the emergency lights flickered on. When I looked back, she was gone. I exhaled shakily until I heard the sound of a door slamming from the back room. She was inside. I bolted to the storage area, gripping the flashlight like a weapon.
"Samantha, stop!"
Her voice came from the dark, closer than I expected. "You shouldn't have left me, Ethan." Then I saw her, standing between the shelves of soda crates, her hair hanging in front of her face. In her hand she held a broken bottle, the jagged edge glinting in the light. "Please," I said, "put that down. We can talk." She cut me off with a laugh, short, sharp, and wrong. Talk? That's all I ever wanted. I tried to move past her toward the exit, but she stepped in front of me, blocking the way. Her eyes were wide now, glassy and desperate. "You said you loved me." "That was a long time ago," I said quietly. She tilted her head. "Then why does it still hurt?" Before I could answer, she lunged. I ducked instinctively, the bottle slicing through the air inches from my face. I shoved her back and ran straight for the office. I slammed the door shut and locked it, panting, my heart thundering. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing. Then, scrape, 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 the sound of glass dragging across the door. "You can't hide from me, Ethan," she whispered from the other side. "You never could." I grabbed the landline and dialed 911 with shaking hands. This time it rang. "Wabin, what's your emergency?" "There's a woman in my store," I gasped. "She broke in. She's got a weapon. Please send someone." "Stay where you are," the operator said. "Units are en route." Outside the office, I could hear her pacing, slow, steady steps. Then the sound stopped. Silence. I leaned against the wall, trying not to make a sound. Minutes passed like hours, then a scream, high-pitched, piercing, followed by the crash of breaking glass. I jumped up and peeked through the small office window. Samantha was gone again. The front window was shattered, cold air rushing in. Blue and red lights flashed outside a few minutes later. The police burst in, guns drawn, sweeping the aisles. They found her car still running outside. But she wasn't in it. She wasn't anywhere. They searched the woods, the road, and even the nearby ditch, nothing. It was like she'd vanished into the fog. I quit the next day. The manager told me the cameras had stopped recording at exactly 1:32 a.m., right before the power went out. The footage from earlier that night showed her sitting outside just watching for hours. A week later, a trooper found her car abandoned 10 miles away, door open, keys still in the ignition. She was never found. Sometimes I still dream about that night, about her face pressed against the glass, smiling that dead smile. And sometimes when I drive past Pine Hollow on my way to work, I swear I see her car parked at the old gas station, engine off, headlights on, still waiting. I got the job at Riverside Gas and Mart when I was 24, mostly because no one else wanted it. The pay was trash, the hours were worse, and the night shift was legendary for attracting the kind of people who made you question whether sleep deprivation was worth the paycheck. But I had student loans, overdue rent, and a car that coughed like a dying smoker. So yeah, I took it. The station sat off Highway 79, a few miles outside of Carson Hills. Population barely 6,000. The place had 2 gas pumps, a faded red roof, and a convenience store that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and mop water. By midnight, it was the only building for miles with working lights, a glowing rectangle in a sea of darkness. Most nights were boring. Drunk truckers, lonely travelers, and the occasional junkie looking to trade coins for cigarettes. But occasionally, you'd get someone who didn't fit any category, someone who made your instincts twitch even before your brain knew why. That's how it started the night he came in. It was around 2:15 a.m. A storm had just rolled through, leaving everything slick and silent. I was sitting behind the counter, half watching a true crime podcast and half scrolling my phone. When the door chime went off, the guy who walked in didn't say a word. He was tall, at least 6'3", wearing a wet gray hoodie and old jeans, both splattered with mud. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. The first thing that struck me was how still he was. He didn't browse, didn't look around, just stood there for a moment, letting the door close behind him. Then, without looking up, he said, "Do you have a restroom?" "Yeah," I said, pointing toward the back. "All the way down to your right." He nodded once and started walking. Slow, deliberate steps. I remember thinking it was weird that I couldn't hear his footsteps, even on the sticky tile floor. The moment he disappeared into the hallway, I got that feeling. The one that starts in your stomach and crawls up your spine, whispering that something isn't right. 5 minutes passed, then 10. No sign of him. I frowned, checking the CCTV monitor behind the counter. The hallway camera showed the bathroom door slightly ajar, but it was dark inside. No movement. "Hey man," I called out. "Are you okay back there?" No response. I stepped out from behind the counter, hesitating at the start of the hallway. The smell hit me first, damp earth and something metallic. I called again, louder this time, still nothing. I approached the bathroom door slowly. It was half open. I pushed it gently, the hinges creaking, empty. No one was there. I blinked, confused. There was only one way in or out, and I would have seen him leave on the camera. Unless I turned toward the small storage door beside the restroom. It was supposed to stay locked, but the latch was slightly open. My hand shook as I reached for it. Before I could touch the handle, something scratched from the other side. Not loud, just a slow, deliberate drag like nails on wood. That was enough for me. I backed away, shut the hallway door, and locked it from the main side. Then I went back behind the counter, grabbed the store phone, and called my coworker, Jamie, who worked the morning shift. "Dude," I whispered, "I think someone's hiding in the back." Jamie laughed sleepily. "Are you high?" "I'm dead serious. Some guy went into the bathroom and didn't come out. Probably left when you weren't looking." "I was looking. Cameras are right here," Jamie sighed. "Okay, I'll come early. Just chill until I get there." 20 minutes passed, no movement. But then, on the security screen, I saw something. The storage room door, the one I'd locked from the outside, was open again. Not wide. Just enough that I could see the dark crack down the middle. I leaned closer to the monitor. The static flickered for half a second, and in that flicker I swear I saw a face in the gap. Just a flash, pale skin, dark eyes, looking directly at the camera. I froze. When the screen stabilized, the door was shut again. I grabbed my phone and called the police. The dispatcher sounded skeptical but promised to send a deputy. While I waited, I kept my eyes glued to the hallway feed. For a long time, nothing happened. Just the hum of the coolers and the buzz of the lights. Then the bathroom door moved. Slowly, it opened all the way, creaking like an animal exhaling. I didn't see anyone come out. But the next thing I knew, the motion sensor light at the end of the candy aisle blinked on. Something was moving inside the store. I dropped the phone, backed up against the counter, and reached for the baseball bat we kept near the register. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear. Then I saw him. He stepped into the aisle like a shadow that had decided to solidify. Same hoodie, same wet jeans, eyes too wide and unblinking. But there was something different now. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows and his hands were covered in mud. No, not mud. Something darker, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "You shouldn't have locked the door," he said softly. "I called the cops," I said, trying to sound confident. He tilted his head. "I know." Then in one motion he reached into his hoodie. I raised the bat, ready to swing, but instead of a weapon he pulled out a camera. Old school Polaroid style. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. He didn't answer. He just lifted it and snapped a picture. The flash burned white across the room. I flinched, momentarily blinded. When my vision cleared, he was gone. The police arrived 5 minutes later. They searched the store, the storage room, and even the roof. Nothing. But they did find muddy footprints leading from the back hallway to the door, then vanishing a few feet outside into the rain. "Probably some drifter," the deputy said. Scared him off, but I knew he wasn't scared. He'd looked calm. Too calm. The deputy left me his card and told me to call if anything else happened. I nodded, pretending I'd be fine. When Jamie arrived at dawn, I told him what happened. He laughed until I showed him the Polaroid that had printed from the camera flash. It had been lying on the floor behind the counter. The picture was of me, standing behind the register, looking terrified moments before the photo was even taken. That wiped the smile off his face. I quit 2 days later. Couldn't do it. Couldn't spend another night in that place. The manager didn't even argue. Said half the new hires never lasted past a month. But here's the thing that still gets me. About 3 weeks later, I was scrolling through a local Facebook group when I saw a post titled "Missing Person Jamie Reeves." My stomach dropped. He'd been covering a night shift the evening before he disappeared. Police found his car still parked behind the gas station. They never found him. But they did find a photo taped to the inside of the bathroom door. It was blurry and overexposed. but you could make out Jamie's shape, and behind him in the darkness that same man's silhouette. Occasionally, I drive past that station at night. It's closed now, boarded up, the pumps covered in rust. But every now and then, if you look at the second window from the left, you can see the faint flicker of a flash just for a second, like someone's still in there, taking pictures of whoever gets too close, and every time I see it, I keep driving. Because I know if I stop, he'll be waiting for me to pose.